So, hello to everyone who is logging on to this webinar. So excited that you guys are here today as our speakers, but also anyone watching, excited that you are here today too. Welcome to the ROI of Process Automation, sponsored by our partner airSlate. So if you haven't seen me on webinars before, my name is Adriana. I'm the community manager here at RevGenius. And if you haven't heard of RevGenius before for some reason, we are a totally free community for anyone in tech roles, especially sales, marketing, success, and RevOps. So if you like free events and you like making friends in the industry, make sure you're in our Slack group at revgenius.com. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. We'll start with Priyanka. I would love if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about what you do and why you're excited to be here today.
Thanks, Adriana. Hello, everyone. Nice to have you part of this conversation. So I am the VP of Product Marketing at airSlate. And what that means is I deeply understand our customer needs to influence both the product roadmap as well as the go-to-market motions within the organization. I have had experience working and understanding with RevOps and sales leaders in the past, as well as at airSlate, to uniquely understand your needs. And we're very excited of how airSlate can help solve some of the challenges that you're facing, and we would be discussing more of that today. With that, I'll pass it to Harry.
Thanks. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. So my name's Harry Rhatigan. I'm a solution architect here at airSlate. So my job revolves around having conversations with our prospects, customers, and partners about what problems they're looking to solve with airSlate. Oftentimes that revolves around the revenue lifecycle. Prior to airSlate, I spent some time as a consultant and in the commercial IT space. So RevOps is near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of my career in that sphere, probably before RevOps was a coined term. So yeah, it's nice to meet everyone. Yeah, excited to talk today.
Awesome. Cool. So just for everyone watching, some of the main things that we're going to cover today are understanding process automation. So really kind of discovering like which processes you can actually work towards automation with, looking at short-term versus long-term value. So really like gaining clarity on the processes that offer immediate benefits versus which ones are going to be longer, kind of more strategic projects. And then also tools, just kind of a brief summary of the tools that are available for different processes, kind of allowing you to make more informed decisions based on your requirements for your team. So while you guys are watching, if you think of any questions or you want to contribute anything to the conversation, be sure to drop it in the chat. If you're on AirMeet, it's just on the right side. Should be the same on LinkedIn. So we would love to answer any questions for you guys and really just dive into all of these topics with you. So let's get started. So Priyanka, I would love to hear from your perspective, like how has the RevOps role evolved and what are the main challenges that you're kind of seeing people really grapple with lately?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think when we think about RevOps, like the operations role is not something new. We always had sales ops, marketing ops, but RevOps, as Harry was pointing out, is a term that's recently become very popular. And what that means is aligning all go-to-market functions to a single goal and target within the organization. And so they are aligned to more a revenue number, which makes sense for all go-to-market teams to be owning that number. And RevOps as a persona within that organization plays a very important role in aligning the organization towards that goal, in making sure data is not siloed within different tech stacks, as we know that most organizations have multiple technologies that they use, and data about their customer, about their prospects will be driven in very different systems. And so creating that shared visibility across the data for every team to be able to drive towards that consistent goal is something that RevOps is definitely very focused on. And the last is around processes within the organization. So as they think about their go-to-markets or revenue life cycle for their customers and their prospects, they look into what are the different processes that each of my users, whether it's a marketing or a sales user, interacts with. How can we optimize? How can we make those more efficient? And that's one of the areas that they are mostly focused on as well. And so when we think about the titles of RevOps on LinkedIn, it's grown 300% over the last 2 years. And that just shows that this as a function is becoming very increasingly important within organizations. And with these things comes challenges, as we know that there's challenges with like data visibility, there's challenges in process, there are manual steps, there's too many tools within the organization, and they are driving towards its efficiency and one single goal of revenue. And those are the things that we hear constantly from our customers, and where airSlate uniquely helps is in the process place.
Awesome. Harry, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Priyanka covered it pretty well. Usually when people reach out to us, it's about a specific problem that they're trying to solve, often around document workflow and processes. But I think it's really about taking a step back from that initial problem you're trying to solve and taking a look at your overall structure. And those handoffs between teams, I think RevOps is uniquely positioned to identify where those bottlenecks exist, and then work with those multiple stakeholders to identify, here's how we do it today, but ideally, this is where we would get to. And that's really that stock take is sometimes it's hard to step back from the day to day, and we all have busy schedules and meetings and things of that nature. But especially with RevOps, where you're talking to so many different people, taking a step back and saying, what can we do better here, and what can we automate is always a great way to get started.
Definitely makes sense. I kind of love being on some of these webinars, especially for topics that, I've never worked in RevOps before. I've always been on the sales and marketing side. So it's just so interesting to learn about this. And I kind of love what you said about RevOps being better positioned to kind of see all of these issues because it's from my experience being in other departments, you don't really have that same line of thinking. So it's super cool to learn about. Alrighty, so I do want to get into how do RevOps teams actually determine the process that needs to be automated? How can they where do they start? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I think the easy candidates for automation are where I'm doing something and I'm doing the same thing every time. If there's ever copy and pasting, that's a candidate for automation in today's landscape. But where things are sticky, where there's a handoff that I need to go tap Priyanka on the shoulder because this happened so that she can continue her work. We invest heavily in the systems that make our jobs easier, the CRM space, on the other side, ERPs as well. So in those handoffs between teams, those are great candidates for automation, but also whenever it's a repeatable process. So I need to drum up a sales order, or I need to get this NDA out to my customer before we continue on in our sales cycle. Shortening those time windows will shorten the entire deal life cycle. And we want to make sure that we get those leads in, converted, the actual contacts and opportunities converted into paying customers. And then we want to make sure that those customers are happy as well. So customer success thereafter, that onboarding experience. And any friction that's caused by the systems that we have in place, or the long running handoffs, or someone's out on vacation, so I can't be doing this. I can't get that to you today, but I can follow up on Monday. We're building rapport, and we're not going to replace all of us, even with all the AI landscape that's going on. So we want to make sure that customer relationship or the relationship between us and our prospects, technology is not getting in the way. It only helps.
Definitely. So we did get a question from the audience, so I want to kind of dive in to what Caesar asked, which was, are the instances where an automation or customization is able to eliminate a cursory piece of tech?
So I'm not exactly sure what a cursory piece of tech, if a piece of technology is not serving you and it's only serving to get in the way, then I do think that's a candidate for, hey, can we look at another system to replace that? Or can we really cut down on the number of systems in our landscape? So if we're
CRM with lead routing vendor, for instance.
Yeah, I think the tool sets that you have should be serving you. So if there are instances where one piece of technology is providing a little bit of value, but not up to the for the level in which the investment and the administration of that technology is helping you in your, accomplishing your goals and making sure that that revenue is coming in the door and staying there, that would be a good candidate to say, hey, what else is out there in the industry? And I
Oh,
do
sorry, guys.
hear,
I think that's someone outside. Hold on one second.
no problem.
And just to add to Harry's point, the other thing that we see is there's a lot of consolidation of technology happening. Like sometimes it's hard for what our customers are saying. It's hard for us to like manage so many different products and solutions. And we've seen a plethora that have been solving very unique problems, but there could be a way in which one technology can solve a more of the solutions. So consolidation is some other trend that we are seeing within our customer base as well.
Awesome. All right. So when we're talking about automation, how can teams prioritize these initiatives? What should they be looking at? Are there KPIs that matter in this process? Would love to kind of get more in the details of all of this.
Yeah, so if you've identified your bottlenecks and you understand, the quote to order process is taking much longer than we think it should. Ideally, you would set out a goal to what that quote to order timeframe should look like, or for an airSlate candidate process, what does it take for us to drum up a custom contract for a prospect we're onboarding, or getting an NDA in place so that we can continue in the sales cycle. Those specific metrics, I think you should first understand, after reviewing what is the current process, and then, shoot for the stars and what you can cut that down. And in the process of automating that, you'll most likely understand that, okay, we've solved this part, but now the handoff to another team or the downstream processes still require manual intervention. And then we can, shift from a small KPI to the whole entire deal lifecycle and work piece by piece where we have the most friction.
Yeah, and some of the questions that we've seen helpful for customers is like, we've heard the stat, like most of our sellers are doing 35 to 40% admin work. So deeply understanding what kind of admin work and what kind of manual steps are they doing, and not focusing on like their customer and what they're really passionate about is selling and talking and learning more about their customer needs. That's one way, a way to identify. The second is like when we think about like the customer journey, like there are different handoffs that happen, to Harry's point, from an SDR to an AE, from an AE to a CSM. So just looking through like how many times are we asking the customer to provide the same information that internally we as an organization have gathered. But just because it was a different role that was interacting with that customer, that information gets lost. And how might we have that seamless transfer of information in a way that adheres to the methodology that the organization uses? Every organization has their own sales methodology where they have different ways of capturing the information about the customer and ensuring that those trigger points and the things that are most important to that customer is carried throughout the life cycle.
Awesome. That totally makes sense. I would assume, like I think a lot of things about RevOps, that there's probably a lot of things that most people don't understand or they kind of have misconceptions about. Are there any like myths that you guys can debunk for us just about kind of automating your processes? I would love to kind of get into this.
I would say the myth is, hey, can we have this happen automatically? The people on this call, or if we're not specifically in charge of the systems, someone does need to understand that process in order to make that automation happen. So we're not at the point where we can just ask our computers to make magic things happen and have it be so. Maybe sometime soon, but yeah, it's the people on this call that are going to make that happen. So, and I think that also goes back to, understanding what are your priorities and having laser focus to say, if we make this improvement, it'll affect the 40 members of this, maybe our account management team, and it will give them back, 4 hours on average per week. And of course that adds up, and it makes it pretty easy for us to say, I need to focus on this to make everyone in the company's work a lot easier and smoother. But I think the myth is that it will just happen. So someone needs to make that decision and think through the process and understand the ins and outs.
Yeah, and one of the myth I would add is that the role of RevOps has not simplified. It's become more complex because it's more processes, more people, more teams. And so they play a more strategic role of being the glue within the organization to understand the breakages points or how what are the areas where like my users or my organization is struck, but also keep that very strategic lens of how are we driving towards our revenue goal that we have set out to.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What would you say, I would love to hear from both of you on this as well, is like, what are the biggest mistakes that you see people making kind of during these attempts at automating?
I would say trying to automate the process as it stands today. So this is how we do it today. I think whenever you're taking on a project to improve something, you should look to improve it. So if that means you can leverage your data in a different way that, in a manual fashion would be tedious, or if you're, take it as an opportunity to improve the actual handoff and allow for more interaction so that it'll lead to a better customer experience at the end of the day. That is something that I do see. It's we just need to fix this and have this happen automatically, but maybe we want to change what it is that's happening automatically. And sometimes that's difficult, and that again requires buy-in from the stakeholders involved.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but it's worth the time investment.
For sure.
Yeah, and
Priyanka, I would love.
Yeah, sorry, excited to jump in sooner than you prompted me.
Go ahead.
So sometimes it's also like because processes are very long and complex in some situations, and that might be as we have writer's block, that might be a block in terms of determining what to automate. So how should they think small of what is the most painful thing in the process, and then expand versus trying to boil the ocean in one go, but like modularizing and compartmentalizing the process to understand the breakage points would be the other thing that we see. Sometimes customers just are unable to start because they want to solve everything under the sun.
Yeah. So in terms of like figuring out the future of these, basically just the ability to automate all of this stuff in the first place, like what are you guys excited about? What are you seeing that's kind of like new, up and coming, that people are being able to do with all of this technology?
Priyanka, you want to take that one first?
I can take that one. So I think what we are seeing is that there's a lot of tech stack, like there's a lot of tech product around the CRM. The CRM has become the hub, and there are a lot of products around that ecosystem that solve different needs. And there is a jaded feeling from people of integrating and every software being very hard to manage and integrate. So one of the things we hear is what can we simplify in our tech stack, and how can we do more with less? And so rather than having 4 solutions stitched together, is there a one solution that would help us do? And sometimes the answer is no. You need all the 3 or all the other tools that you're using, but that's something that we are seeing. We are definitely seeing how AI is taking off, and like in terms of like helping people become more efficient in the places we do. We are exploring about how we could incorporate those, but what we are focused in, what most of our customers want is, what is an easy to use tool that I don't need a technical person to come in and implement? We don't need someone, like I as a business professional am empowered to make the changes within the organization, and it's easy for me to understand. It doesn't take me months. I don't need consultants in seat to implement it. And that's one thing that we definitely are seeing a trend towards, is like simplification and consolidation.
Harry, do you have anything to add?
It's similar to the, empowering more people to make improvements with the use of technology. I think oftentimes there's a skew towards for a piece of tech that will interact with our end customers, be they prospects, partners. A lot of focus is on their experience, but the administrative side and how do we actually get this, in our case, maybe a document or a packet out to them for them to complete. It should be easy on both sides. And with any new piece of technology you're introducing that maybe will be used by your 25-person SDR team, I, for one, am not a big fan of standard operating procedures and creating manuals for my teammates. I don't think I've always been very strong at documentation, which is why I do not write code at all. So having something that's just integrated into the workflow already, and it's saying, hey, you're on this page within the CRM, and this button that's very clearly labeled will take care of it, everything for you. It'll pipe the data in, it'll pipe the data out, and the process will be taken care of. You don't need to set up anything, templatizing those processes that we already went through and laid out the logic, so that we can rely on the automation to do a lot of that work for you. But having the user experience and the employee experience match up in ease of use is definitely something that I think is gaining traction and should be top of mind for when we're implementing tech.
For sure. So I do want to get into kind of airSlate and what you guys are doing over there. But first, how can companies who are kind of running into all of these process issues, what should they be looking for? How can they admit that they have this problem and really take steps to start working on solving it?
Yeah, so I think one way to sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it shows up as a lagging effect, like your deal cycle is long, or your win rate is not where it wants to be, or your revenue goals are hard to meet. And then customers start digging into, but at that point, the problem has already occurred in the revenue cycle at some point where it's causing deals to get stuck, or it's causing customers to lose visibility of who they're going after, what is the likelihood. So I think one of the ways that they can get ahead of it is by asking, because the sales rep's time is the most valuable, what are the kind of manual tasks that they're doing? What are the things that they are consistently repeating over and over again, whether it's into filling documents, whether it's notifying people, whether it's always pinging people on Slack to make sure the VP of Finance has signed their deal. What is causing their deals to get stuck? What are the touch points that deal is going through, and understanding the turnaround time and what is needed for them, and is one of the ways in which they can identify the challenge even before it shows up in the revenue metrics.
Definitely. Caesar asked a question, which I think everyone needs to know the answer to, which is, how do you win over a key stakeholder to implement change?
So I actually think, Mary, this comment right above that is, and I'll just read that. So automate, or if you want to put it on the screen, I think that's a great call out. So the stakeholder, how do you win them over? Well, it depends on who they are. And when we're talking about change management, you will have to win over all the stakeholders involved in order to push it through, most likely, whether it's a manager or a director, someone high up. Most likely that type of stakeholder wants to understand how those metrics will be affected by this change. And I think we've talked about time and how do we shorten cycles, but also data quality, because the data that's coming in and out at the right time, at the right quality, is important for us to make those longer view decisions about really what is affecting our deal cycle. Well, if there's a lag between when this happens and this handoff takes place, we probably could have shortened that, but what effect would that have? So for those higher ups, we want to make sure that they have the right data to make the right decisions about what actually, like when Priyanka is looking at how our product pages and how people are using our product, accurate data helps her make those decisions. And then for those people that will be part of the process, and maybe they don't care as much about what this means for the 40 people, but just for them, it's really hard to sell a change that's going to make people do more work. So even if it ends in a nice product or output for their customer or for their legal team or downstream customer success, if I have to type in a bunch of data before any of this happens, that's going to put more administrative effort on my plate, and that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. So trying to make it so that you have the right overarching goal, but also everyone involved in that process. You can't sell going backwards to people. It's a tough pill to swallow. So we want to make sure we make improvements for the people that are doing the work. And then we want to make sure that the data that's coming in and out of that process is accurate so that we can really understand the impact that we just made.
Definitely. Priyanka, I would also love to hear your perspective on this, especially coming from a VP. Like, you may be the person that we have to win over at some point. So would love to hear that.
I would break this problem into three. Like there's a group of stakeholders that we need to get alignment for budget. Like when we are thinking about acquiring or buying a solution, there's the group that needs to implement that, and there is a group that's using this tool. So as we think about these three cohorts, the one who is making the decision, for them, understanding what metrics will this help solve, and most likely it might be a business metric like revenue, it could be time to deal cycle, or it could be data quality in the CRM. Like understanding who the stakeholder is and what's important would help you win that deal for that or buy that tool. When it comes to implementation, for many of the vendors out there might be saying, like understanding deeply of how long it takes to implement, who else would be needed, how technical of an implementation it is, so that you understand within this organization is like, if I said I'm buying this tool today, my users are expecting it tomorrow, but it's going to be implemented in 3 months. That's not going to be a good experience, and you lose credibility within the organization. So having an understanding of how long will this take for you to implement within your organization, what are the different tools it touches, and the technical requirements. And thirdly is one of the things that many of the RevOps leaders think about is, are my sellers going to use this? There's so many tools that we want them to use. They are busy selling. Is this going to add value to them? And if it is going to add value, how can I motivate or incent them to use this tool? And keeping that user-centric and adoption mindset in view would help you drive this change across your organization.
Awesome. It's so great to be able to hear both of your perspectives, because obviously like they are pretty similar, but they are kind of coming from different directions. All right, so I would love to kind of talk a little bit, Priyanka, if you would, about how customers are using airSlate to actually help with all of this automation.
Yeah, so the primary use case that we see, and this one of the reasons why we built airSlate, was many of our customers, we had an e-signature tool called SignNow. Many of our customers were using Signature, but they had many needs before the document was created, as well as after the document was completed. And that made us realize is there are different tasks that seller or a customer facing role needs to do to create that document, and repeatedly do it over and over. So one of the places that we really have seen a lot of customers find value is in the document contract generation as well as negotiation. So how can I pull data from my CRM? How can I pre-populate that data within the document? How can I ensure that we have a back and forth and get the right approvals if needed for that particular deal, and then get that out for signature and approved and stored, and all my CRM data is up to speed. So that's one use case that we have seen. The second is around whether it's understanding customer needs. And sometimes many of our sellers need to create those requirements of their customers or gather those requirements early on. And how can they do it in a seamless way that is easy within their workflow for them to capture that need, whether it's sending out NDA forms to some customers that they need to like share more privy information to, or like some clients that people need to send. So those are the two other scenarios. And the last I would say is in the handoffs. So how can we seamlessly think about, like, if an organization has is adhering to a certain sales methodology, wants to capture notes. How can we trigger that repeatable or that information about the customer in a seamless way within the CRM?
Awesome. Let me see. There were some people in the chat who have recommended the book Switch to help with change management. I'm not sure if either of you guys have read that one, but just wanted to call it out in case anyone hasn't seen the
I'll
comments.
add it to my list.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Awesome. So Harry, can you kind of talk us through like best practices when you're implementing automation? What should people be doing and kind of keeping an eye on?
We touched on some of them. I think analyzing current state and then projecting desired state, and what are the jumps that could get us there is a big one. And then also, once you have an idea of where you'd like to be, what will make the biggest difference today? So that goes back to where are our biggest bottlenecks, where is the most pain, either from an internal team or where have we heard from customers that this part of our process is either taking too long or is confusing or difficult to complete. And then a less exciting one, but one that's very important, is make sure to get the stakeholders involved in testing. And I always like to identify candidates who are, they've been called automators in the past, who are excited about these types of things being implemented that will hopefully help their day-to-day and will provide you with great feedback. Because as much as we have conversations and we do our best to put ourselves in the shoes of those different stakeholders, we want their eyes on the final product before it goes out to a wider audience. So leave room for you to have some testing, have some real people involved in that testing other than ourselves in a room, and then also leave time to implement some of those changes, because we all work with great people and they have great ideas, and we want to make sure that we leave time to implement those as well.
Definitely. So I would kind of love to get into, I think it's a little bit of a fun question, but like, what keeps you guys up at night? Like, what do you see from customers that you're just like laying in bed, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so crazy, or like, how are they dealing with this? Yeah. What keeps you up at night about process automation?
Yeah, that's a longer list for me. So in our area, when we're talking about document workflows, I think whenever I say, hey, could you take me through how you do this today? And I see someone open up a word processor and in another window have, say, a Salesforce record open, and then they're clicking through different tabs. That hurts my soul. That's what we're trying to solve. But then also to understand what, if someone says, hey, I understand, I want to automate this process. I know we definitely could do this with your product. And there's things out there that would help automate this. And then you ask the question, what happens after, you get this document back and they've agreed to go with you? Then we reach out to a Slack channel and we get the provisioning team to go into our back end and actually provision them. And then hopefully the email goes out and I follow up. I get CC'd on that. So all those things where, yes, you're going to automate this document going out, but you have systems in place and you probably are paying for a nice CRM in all your systems, and they have integration capabilities. So, we integrate out of the box with a lot of different systems because we know that people, maybe you want to store those files in a SharePoint because you don't want everything. Not everyone has access to your CRM, and some people need access to those files. So making things like that easier and less reliant upon, oh, I've got this back, I needed to notice this, and then I need to take some action. The more you can do of that, the better. So that's usually what gets me excited. I'll reframe it as gets me excited about the possibilities there.
Yeah, I will not disclose how many Slack channels and Word documents and Excel sheets we have at RevGenius.
We have more Slack channels. I mean, we have a Slack channel with RevGenius. So
yeah,
we're not completely free of this sin.
Juanita actually had a great comment in the chat. She said, I've gotten really good at people process progress automation, if that makes sense. This makes a bit more sense now, which I think is awesome. Meredith actually asked 2 questions. She said, if I have an org that has unique templates within a particular tool and mapping rarely being 100%, have you calculated the extra time needed for these customizations? Any insight there?
So I think that usually boils down into 2 buckets. It's either a data quality issue, in which, the goal would be, okay, how do we attack that? How do we get better data in there? If it's simple changes to the template per customer, I would probably say, ask the question, what value are those small changes happening? Do we have the ability to map out the reasons why we would make each and every one of those changes? And can we apply logic to it so that we could automate it? And it's never 100%. So there are instances where a big customer comes along and we want to, send out a very flowery proposal to them that is different than what our standard is. And in those instances, maybe it makes sense to actually spend the time and do that high value activity yourself. And you can always check it against what you've outputted. But for those one-offs, it's really a value calculation of, am I trying to, again, boil the ocean for capturing all those possibilities? Where if you can get 90% of that, that's great. And you should count that as a win. It's often only those ones that are either sticky clients, a partner who maybe doesn't like to play by the rules that are the outliers. And we just want to evaluate if they're valuable activities, they don't need to be counted for those 90% that we are hitting with an automation tool.
Got it. Yeah, again, if you guys are watching and you have questions, anything has come up for you while you've been watching this, make sure to drop it in the chat. I do want to get into a little bit like different vendors. What are the different vendors out there and how can buyers start evaluating their options? Priyanka, take it away.
Yeah, so I think when we've seen customers reach out to us, sometimes they have a very specific problem. They just need their contracts to get an e-sign. So that's a specific use case. There are multiple vendors in there. We play with SignNow as well as we have DocuSign and other players in there. The second category that we see customers wanting to automate is more in the contract generation process. It's like, they need to pull information from their CRM and need to make sure that that information is accurate and is in a format that that works for them. And so that's where airSlate comes into places. Like it can pull information from the CRM and fill the customer data. It works with complex tables. There are other vendors that also do it, and like Conga and DocuSign CLM. And then we have, when we think about, there are use cases where we have seen our customers request information from their end customers and use that information to fill contracts. And so they're combining a web form with a contract generation and using that the information they collect from the user to create that document. And that's something that where airSlate uniquely is positioned, is like combining different document types in a single send for signature and making sure it's automated. Like your contract gets pre-populated with whatever the customer has filled, and the contract they see is based on what they just filled. And so those are other scenarios where we have seen. And if we take a step back, where process automation was in the past was mostly, and like a consultant would come into your organization, would take a whiteboard and map out the different process and would spend months in like, this is the ideal flow, this is where we want to go, this is how we're going into. And many of the large organizations have legacy systems that do that and will continue to do that. But where we are seeing most of the growth is where we are empowering business professionals to be able to own automation, to be able to own and drive the change within the organization, where they don't need resources or even very technical skills to be implementing within there. So their impact is more pronounced.
Yeah, but with less complication, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Awesome. Meredith has a question. I think Harry is probably going to be the best one to answer this, but she said, secondly, if you work with any HR, ATS, or human capital world in general, can you talk mapping challenges and at what point in the workflow? What is airSlate's position on AADS and does it come up a lot?
So we do have some customers using airSlate. So with applications and human capital, onboarding is actually a huge use case for airSlate, just because there's a lot of documents that we all signed when we joined our different companies. And then application tracking, applications, again, oftentimes, as much as we hope that we can just submit our LinkedIn profile, oftentimes there's other information, qualifications, certifications that you need to upload. So currently, the ATS use cases that we work with airSlate, so with our out-of-the-box integrations, are mostly Force.com apps. So I was actually talking with a prospect just this week on their process for tracking applicants, as well as, they hire consultants on behalf of their clients. So that kind of handoff between what is a client, what is a customer, and a lot of that has to do with how you have that data organized. And then hopefully airSlate can just help to, again, with that handoff at this stage of the process, get the application in front of the client, or the statement of work in front of the client, or application in front of the applicant and statement of work in front of the client. Because there's a lot of juggling of plates in that world where you're saying, here are my resources, these are the projects I have upcoming. So we don't want to spend time tracking things down and then getting that information. In this case, it was a Force.com ATS back into that centralized system so that they can manage that workflow, and just use airSlate to kind of help with those in those points where we either need to get a signed contract from our client, or we need to gather information and get that into our ATS from the applicant themselves.
Awesome. If I need to ask an interesting question, more so on the AI side, but you said, how do you help people feel comfortable with these changes without making them feel AI is decreasing personal opportunities?
That's a great question. I think that's something that's top of mind for many folks. The way I see AI is going to help us be more productive and efficient in what we do, and like remove the things or make it easy for the things that should not take that much like should not have been on our plates or should not be taking that much time. So it's more about helping you focus on what matters and what will help you succeed in your role more effectively, while taking the meanwhile and the other mundane things out of the way.
Awesome. Harry, do you have any perspective that you want to share on this question as well?
Yeah, I think it's, especially in, a sales and customer success, customer facing roles, it's just more opportunity to make those personal connections, as opposed to be doing administrative work. Hopefully AI takes a lot of the work that we have to do, but are not always energized by, away and off our plates. And we have more time to have conversations like this and understand how we can help our customers and also our teammates.
Awesome. And last question that I see in the chat here is, are there connections to email marketing with airSlate?
We do have some customers leveraging airSlate, especially if you're doing blasts out to people that have raised their hand and you want to onboard them as a customer and you have a nice packet you want them to fill out. I wouldn't say it's something that is that large of a focus area for us. I don't know, Priyanka, if you have more on that, but we do have some people that are doing that, but oftentimes that's because they have a very specific type of package they would want people to fill out prior to engaging.
Yeah, and we have less seen it. Like always, it's in the context of a document. And so email marketing sometimes is just engagement, and that kind of use cases are a little fewer that we see. And it's more about automating your document processes.
Definitely makes sense. All right. I do see that someone asked in the Q&A a few minutes ago what department or business unit has been the best to connect with, but I'm not totally sure if you could provide a little bit more context to your question. Just not totally certain where they were trying to go with that. But we would love to answer it for you. But so we do just have a couple minutes left. So would love to get into a little bit more fun questions. Just would love to hear like a little bit more about who you guys are. Tell us one thing that you like to do for fun and where people can kind of reach out to you if they have additional questions after we log off.
Yeah, I can start. You can reach me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/ I think Priyanka Saha. You'll be able to find me there. I can also drop it in the chat after I tell my fun portion. So I think there are two aspects of fun that I like. I like traveling. I go to the most remote places. I am going to travel to Panama in a few weeks. And someone was asking me, why Panama? Why not some exotic places? And I'm like, I like to travel to all these random weirdo places. And so that is something I like to do for fun. Yeah.
Awesome, Harry.
For me, same thing. LinkedIn, Harry Rhatigan. There's just a silent H in that last name. Couldn't just have an H in my first name, so needed to slot one in there. And then for fun, I probably would have said traveling a year ago, but and my daughter is turning 1 this weekend, so I think that the fun I have is really revolved around watching her grow at this point, and I'm quite all right with that.
That's awesome. What's one thing that you like to do for fun? Oh wait, you already answered that.
Yeah, probably take her on the swings. It's it's more fun for me than her probably at this point.
Quality time with her, his daughter.
Yeah. Okay, Meredith actually slipped one more question in there, so let's answer this for her. Are there any stats on automation or paperless impact to sustainability?
I feel like we did release a white paper on that, Priyanka, but that would be more in your realm than mine.
Yes, I don't remember the stats top of mind, but what we've seen is that with COVID, people were looking to go digitalize. And so with digital signatures and digital processes, it definitely is reducing the paper consumption. And in terms of like the ROI metrics in terms of what it helps us do, it's reduced time to close deals. It's more faster growth in your close won opportunities.
Nice. That is awesome. I was trying to find it online to see if I could find the link really fast, but I'm not seeing it. So if I find that, or if you guys could send it to me, I can make sure that everyone that was watching does get the link so they can check it out if they have more questions about that. But thank you guys so much for being here today. Oh, I think we may have one more question. We'll just get this one in really fast. No worries, Juanita. You don't have to be sorry. I just saw it come in right now. So she asked, so the customer success department can use this account management, it seems, but I haven't had a chance to try this yet. I think I should learn it. Who are the biggest competitors of airSlate? If you want to get into that.
Yeah, so where we see most of our most of our customers who come to us are looking for e-signature solutions, and then they realize the capabilities that can be automated beyond e-signature, and that's how they discover airSlate. So when we think about the competitors of airSlate, it's a very unique space. So we have Zapier out there that does a lot of just integration with different systems. And with airSlate also, we have similar integrations, but we also have unique capabilities within the platform of document generation, e-signature, contract negotiation. And in that space, it falls very similar to maybe a Conga or a DocuSign CLM, but sometimes those are not suited for small to mid-sized companies, and they want more flexibility in the kind of solution. So those are what we see.
Awesome. And actually, last question just came in the Q&A. So Kamran asked, who's seeing the most value off process automation? Is it ops or HR? It sounds like you guys have mentioned sales and like document signing a lot, but curious about this as well.
Yeah, so the actually we see it across a few different personas. So ops is definitely one of the personas that find a lot of value because they are looking into efficiencies. The second I would say is related to ops is we also see the implementers, the CRM admin, like someone who is in the CRM system and looking for tools to drive that efficiency. Sometimes they first sit in ops, sometimes they don't, but these are the implementers roles. And lastly, I would say IT is sometimes tasked to find these solutions and to create that because they have cost reduction as one of their goals, especially in this environment where budgets are tight. How do I optimize my stack? How do I create efficiency? How do I not give rise to shadow IT apps that are out there? And so that would be the third persona that we see a lot getting value from our solution.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for being here today, for answering all of our questions. Just super appreciate it. So if you are watching and you're not already a RevGenius member, make sure you go to revgenius.com, get into our Slack. If you want to check out airSlate, go to airslate.com, tell them we sent you. And everyone that signed up will get a replay directly to your email that should be going out tomorrow. And we'll try to include that link with the sustainability info in that as well. But thank you, everyone.